Hi, and welcome to this episode of Fintech Finance, the Virtual Arena, the show where we discuss what's going on in the world of fintech right now. Now, today we're heading over the pond to charming Canada, where we'll be talking about a brand new Islamic finance and investment provider, Manzil. Now, Manzil recently won the Most Promising Islamic Fintech Startup of the Year award for 2019. So we're really excited to be hosting them today. And joining me today to talk more is the co-founder and CEO, Mohamad Sawwaf. Hey, Mohamad.
Hi, Hannah. Thank you so much for having me. This
Thank
is
you so
truly an
much.
honor.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. It's an honor for us. And you're joining us from Toronto, is that right?
Yes, that is correct. One of the Queen's countries, as we say.
That's awkward, but yeah. Cool. So I have a bunch of questions, but probably the most important one is, can you please tell us more about Manzil, about what you're about?
Yeah, Manzil is the only Islamic fintech here in Canada that's addressing the need of about 1.6 million Muslims. They're currently underbanked. There are no solutions that adhere to their faith. And we're here to solve that problem. We've currently launched a few products in the market, and we're happy to talk in more detail about them with you. But that's really where the focus is and the need, because they've been shut out from conventional finance for so long. And as you know, being in the UK, Islamic finance is quite prominent. And it's open, and there are Islamic banks just as much as there are conventional banks. So we're here to pioneer that here in Canada, and we look to the UK actually as an example of that for us.
Yes, I saw some of the blogs. They're very flattering. Thank you very much. I mean, I don't represent the UK fintech sector, but thank you very much. I'm going to ask you more about your products in a minute. But from what I understand, Manzil was born, like you just said, because the community is just underserved in Canada. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so I actually started off as a banker when I graduated in 2007. And when I was approaching the community for, financial solutions, I was getting denied left, right, and center. And I didn't know why at the time, because I didn't understand the difference between Islamic finance and conventional finance. And, once you started to understand the theory about, asset-backed or asset-based transactions, ensuring that there's no money earned on money or the interest component, you started to better understand the fundamentals and the theories. And, that really started to fast track in 2014 when I embarked on my MBA here at the Rutman School. And I hooked up with a professor who was teaching the only Islamic finance course in the country. And he took me under his wing. I became kind of the lead TA and co-lecturer. And we started to teach that course together. And that's where we really start to understand the fundamentals of Islamic finance, how they could be applied in our environment, because you do have to localize the structure. And that really became the platform of the foundation of my trajectory that, started Manzil, because that led me into a second master's and an Islamic finance doctorate out of the Henley Business School in
Look
the
at
UK.
you, like,
Yeah. So, understanding the theory, understanding the principles, really helped to put it into practice, so to speak, right? And so Manzil became a culmination of my professional background, my academic background, because I knew that there was a need, and I felt that I was the only guy that really knew how to structure the products. And so in 2017, we said, you know what, let's see how far we can take this. And here we are today in market with a few products and lots of clients.
Yay! And when you said that when you first started, you got rejected from everywhere, what did you mean? Because you wanted to do Islamic finance and that just wasn't something people wanted to offer? Or?
Yeah, so the rejection came from the community because I was promoting conventional products. But then I also got rejection from the institutions I was working for saying, hey, there's a need here. Let's create a product that would adhere to their faith. And, as much as they felt that there was an opportunity, I guess they just didn't understand how to execute it and what the risks were involved. And so I had to basically take that role and prove people wrong, so to speak.
Nice. And you're still proving people wrong now?
Yes, absolutely.
Nice. So the Islamic finance market is worth 2.7 trillion US dollars worldwide. But as you said, there's not really any competition for you in Canada. You're pretty much, can I say that you've got the monopoly? Do you feel that you're like just sitting on this gold mine and no one else has done anything and you're the only one who's seen like the obvious?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right in that the global Islamic finance markets, 2.7 and growing at double-digit CAGR. So it's like the fastest growing industry worldwide. And we've done so much third-party market research. There's even a Thomson Reuters report that analyzes and assesses how big the Islamic finance market here in Canada is. I wouldn't say that we have a monopoly yet, just because we haven't saturated the market. But if no competition does come in, then I would definitely see us as one of the pioneers, and could have a monopolistic entity long term, just because people in Canada, they're quite conservative, so they don't like to be first movers. They're more first followers, so to speak, and we have an oligopoly of banks, and they're quite happy and satisfied with where they are. They don't like to innovate. Something that we as fintechs here are pushing the government for is getting a challenger bank status similar to the UK, and they're just not they're not allowing for it to happen, or that adoption is happening very, very slow. So we do hope that as we grow and we continue to grow, and we take market share away from the conventional banks, they'll start to realize that this is a true opportunity that they did miss out on.
Yes, you're very political, aren't you? When I was reading through your blogs, I'm asking these questions in totally the wrong order now.
That's absolutely fine.
When I was reading through your blogs, then I saw that there is like quite like this reoccurring theme that there needs to be a stronger fintech sector in Canada. Is that something that you're going to really lobby government? Do you have any plans for that?
So we're currently, let's call it, in indirect discussions with government entities that are, supporting, let's call it, residential mortgage programs, and looking for innovative ways to address certain market or demographic needs. That being of rural communities that don't really have access to solutions on a virtual or digital basis. As we know now in COVID, that's more, it's a pressing matter more than ever. And of course, certain demographic groups that have the ability to buy a house, right, but can't because the solution doesn't adhere to kind of their requirements. So for example, Muslim Canadians, currently have $20 billion worth of spending power on an annual basis. They have double the national average when it comes to post-secondary education. They're debt averse, of course, because they don't like interest. So, they're not in debt. And they have double the national average when it comes to household income. But when you look at their participation in housing and participation in capital market solutions, they're actually the lowest on that poll. And it's not, and I always tell people, I said, it's not because of their balance sheets. Their balance sheets are very, very strong. It's just because of their belief in a certain way of financial transactions that they don't enter. So there's all of this wealth that's just sitting on the sidelines that's not participating in the economy. And this community is not growing from a net worth perspective, and all because of a lack of product.
Yeah, so perhaps it would be really good if you wouldn't mind explaining this a bit more to some of our viewers and also me. So
yeah,
the way that I think this works is that in the Muslim community, you can't have interest because you can't make money on money, because money is an exchange tool, not something that can grow on its own. So
exactly.
The way you do it is called the murabaha principle, and you kind of sell a house to someone for slightly more money than it costs, and that like counteracts. Is that right?
Yeah. So basically, you did a wonderful job explaining it. Probably one of the best that I've ever heard for an amateur. No word of a lie there. So Islamic finance is all about trade-based finance, right? So as you said, money is a means; it has no value, and it's not. You can't earn something that you didn't work for, so to speak, right? So murabaha is one type of transaction, as you had mentioned, which is a credit sale model. So if another example is if you were to enter into my cell phone store and you said, Mohamad, I want the latest iPhone. And I said, well, it's, $1,500 cash today. And he said, well, I don't have that money. Can you finance it for me? In a typical conventional transaction, you'd probably go to the bank, they would lend you the money, and then you would give me that money, and then you'd have an agreement between you and the bank to pay that money back plus interest.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in Islamic finance, I, being the owner of that asset, would come to you, Hannah, and say, well, instead of $1,500, why don't I sell it to you for $1,800 on a 12-month financing plan at $150 a month? So what I've done there is I've increased the profit by $300. This is not interest because I actually own that asset, and I did a resale at a higher amount that we agreed to over a specific period of time. That is completely allowable. And so what we do is very similar with the housing or residential houses here is you would pick a house that you would want to buy. We would buy it on your behalf. We would have an implicit financing rate that we would capitalize up front. And then we come back to you and say, Hannah, we're going to sell this to you for X. And here's your fixed payment plan over a fixed period of time.
And some people actually prefer that, right? Some people who are not Muslim, they're not doing it for religious reasons. There are benefits to doing things that way because it's not, the interest rates are not so variable because it's like a set amount every.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So in Canada, we have a unique situation where mortgages are renew on a 5-year basis. And so 98% of mortgages in Canada renew every 5 years. So our product, you can actually have a non-renewable term for up to 25 years. So you get to fix that payment. And a lot of non-Muslims have approached us and said, I can't find a 10-year or a 15 or a 20-year fixed rate in the market. You guys seem to be the only ones that have it. I'd love to have that just because I can fix my cash flows on an investment property potentially. I don't have any renewal risk down the road, right? And there's no increase or variability of payment, as you had mentioned. So we definitely feel that we're also a disruptor in that part of the market because Canada is unique in the sense that it only has 5-year renewable terms.
And would you offer that? So if you're the only real people offering that, at the moment you do houses or property and you do cars, right? But would you also extend that to other things like, for example, holidays or phones, like you said? Is that in the pipeline?
So we just actually launched a Halal Visa program this past week. So that's,
Congratulations.
yeah, thank you. So we've launched that. We're also looking to launch a suite of exchange traded funds
Mm-hmm.
on the Toronto Stock Exchange. So that's something that we're working towards. You know, the other items that you're talking about are, let's call it, more household financing. And these are things that we would definitely entertain, I think, down the road. But
Mm-hmm.
our real focus is on, the main product lines that actually help our community build wealth, right? Because there is a value proposition and a social impact that we're trying to create as well within this community to help them, basically change their mindset of, being a saver, which they've always been, into being an investor and being an investor in an appropriate mode of finance that adheres to their faith so that they can sleep peacefully at night.
I wanted to ask you more about this bit about investing because I have to get my notes. I read on your
Sure.
website that, okay, this is what I read. There should be no absent investors who get to deposit their money into a venture and wait to make more money with minimum effort. And then on the product page, it says, sit back and build your halal net worth by watching your hard-earned halal money work for you. So what I don't understand is where's the line between being absent versus sitting back and watching your money work?
Yes. So, the being absent part is really, let's say you put your money into an interest savings account or a high interest savings account, and the money isn't really working. It's just a benefit that you're getting from the bank saying, we're going to take your money and we're going to give you a little bit more money back. You're actually not activating that money in the economy. There's no real growth, right? Whereas in an investment, Islamic financial investment, if we're investing in property, if we're investing in businesses, and we're actually earning a return vis-a-vis profit and capital growth, that's how you're actually, adding an effect, a positive effect to the GDP, to the economy, right? And so when we say let your money work for you, that's the mode of finance that we're focusing on versus putting your money into a savings account and earning a little bit of interest, but it actually does nothing for the economy.
So I think I understand this better now. So it's the idea that you always have to own the asset. So if you buy an asset and then that asset becomes worth more money and then you sell it for more money, then that's okay. But what can't happen is that like you don't really buy an asset, right?
Yeah, so one of the main principles of Islamic finance is entering into asset-backed or asset-based transactions, right? And that's how you will earn your return. And there's shared risk in that. The other aspect to this is participatory finance, right? And so, that's a word that is, common amongst, Islamic bankers is, Islamic banking is participatory rather than predatory. Predatory meaning one-sided. I lend you some money. You now haven't made your payment. You've defaulted. And now I'm going to put you through the ringer and take everything else that you own, right? Whereas in participatory, we're sharing the risk of that asset together, the profits, the losses. We've gone into a business transaction that we know there could be identified risks, but we also know that there is upside versus a guaranteed one-sided agreement.
Got it. Thank you. And have you noticed your impact within the Muslim community? Do you think people now feel more like they're part of the investing culture because there are products for them?
Oh, absolutely. And, we actually underestimated the impact because, when we kind of turned all of our products on, we thought that there was just going to be this influx of people, which we knew that there was demand for. But what actually happened was they didn't even know the basics of investing. And that has nothing to do with Islamic finance, right? So just a local, like there was just like basic financial literacy was actually the bigger obstacle that we had to overcome. And then once they understood that, they know, okay, these are the products and solutions that are available to them. So we actually had to go back to a more lower fundamental to say, well, we now have to be in more of the education and awareness to teach our community the benefits of investing and what type of accounts fit their situation. And once you understand that, then okay, these are the underlying products that you can hold, and oh, by the way, they're also halal certified or Sharia compliant.
We have that problem in the UK too. There's this real like lack of financial literacy or financial knowledge where like most people every day they're just making like incremental like silly decisions because we're not really taught it in schools, and then to learn it as
Yes.
an adult it's like really boring, so no one does it. But actually if you learn it then you can make a lot more money and retire early and do fun stuff. So yeah,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's actually a global concern because, as you mentioned, this is not something we're taught in schools. And so, it does need to be added to the curriculum, and we hope, our governments will listen and hopefully adopt that.
we hope our governments will too. Maybe we'll race you to see who's we can get like
Wonderful.
we can get like what's something no one cares about, like pi. You can get that kicked out of maths and get financial literacy as well.
Yeah.
So what investments, so aside from, for example, buying a property which becomes worth more, what are the investments on the stock market that are okay to invest in for Islamic finance? Because I was thinking it must be like gold and then some commodities and maybe some alternatives, but like assets.
Yeah, so there's a couple of philosophies when it comes to picking a business to invest in, and let's just use the public markets because it's a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
But number one, you have to look at permissible business models, right? So what's impermissible, because that's the shorter list, is not investing or participating in businesses that deal with alcohol, pork, weapons, tobacco companies, casinos or online gambling, or entertainment, right? So those are kind of like what we like to call, or generally speaking, is the sin stocks, right? You don't want to be involved in those. And if you're in the SRI, which is the socially responsible investing space, or the ESG space, these are part of the categories that get filtered out. Now you have industries like you mentioned, like precious metals or natural resources, information technology, healthcare. So let's just pick one of those companies. And what I always mention to people is the companies that are filtered out, they're Islamically compliant, not by design, but by default. right? Because everyone thinks that it's, it's hard to find these companies, or it's hard to build a company along these principles. But we tell people, like, there are so many companies out there that by default are already Sharia compliant. And so the largest one, which is now a $2 trillion company, is Apple, right? They're a technology or hardware type business. And so, from a qualitative perspective, they have the checkbox. Now, what you have to do is actually look at the financials or the books, right? And so you have to assess three main things. You have to assess debt to equity. You also have to assess liquidity, as well as, do they have any activities that are impermissible? And as long as it's less than 5%, then you can still invest in that company. So companies like Apple, other companies, in this space, especially, other tech companies. I'm trying to think of some that are off the top of my head, but there's so many that apply once you put in these filtration criteria, that it becomes very easy. Now, it may not be apparent because you need somebody to actually do that research for you and to tell you that this company is Sharia compliant because of X, Y, and Z. But once you have that information and knowledge, you can then buy that company stock.
So you mentioned like negative screening, and this is something like I'm really into. I'm always writing about it. So sustainable investing or negative screening. You mentioned quite a lot on your website and your marketing material that you're an ethical company, that you're a responsible company. And I was trying to find the line there. To what extent, when you say ethical, you mean religious versus like saving the planet, because we're in the middle of a climate crisis. So do you think the negative screening is kind of your contribution because you're not investing in like bad things, but are you doing any like good things as well?
Yeah, so I think it's a combination of both. I think, the ethics and, we don't necessarily have to tie ethics to religion, right? Ethics just means you're being a good person, right? And so, or having a strong moral compass. And so that's what we're really about, is because, like, banking has this really negative connotation in the marketplace, especially amongst millennials, right? It's all about fees. It's all about just taking money and nothing in return. And so, we're trying to also clean that up by saying, well, here's another model, an alternative model. Doesn't matter whether you're religious or not, but this is just another model that has been around for over 1400 years, right? Since the time of the Prophet, that's been used. And, this is how we can make it more fair, more ethical, in the sense of, participatory versus predatory, because, there's always, these small companies that you hear about, like these payday loan sharks, and, or, people taking advantage of people is really what it is, right? And so we're not in that business. We're coming from it from a more humanistic approach. And so when we're telling people, like, yes, here are some products that, are more ethical or moral, but, here are some investments that are not only ethical from an environmental perspective, right? Because SRI and ESG, are part of that equation. But, you're not only helping the planet, but you're also helping impact a demographic, right, that has never been able to participate before. And now they can actually grow their wealth, vis-a-vis these special types of transactions.
Yeah, and I guess growing your wealth in a way that doesn't, like, is always asset backed. So like, so the Islamic,
there's true value, right? So it's when you look at 2007, 2008, like the last financial crisis, and this is the academic coming out in me, is there's been many academic studies that have compared Islamic financial institutions to their conventional counterparts and how they fared during that downturn. And again, because they were more asset backed, they had less risk. And so they actually outperformed, right? And a key element is debt to equity, right? Because they're only allowed to have a certain percentage of debt on the books, less than a third. And so when you're looking at other institutions, well, they could be highly levered. And of course, there's a lot more risk when it comes to a market downturn.
Yeah, I mean, that's the very last thing that the Islamic finance community would invest in, would be like C-grade bonds on mortgages. right?
Yeah.
Like that's really not on your list at all.
Right. And there's also a principle of speculation and, uncalculated risk. So like even, these solutions of derivatives
Hmm.
are not permissible for us to invest in. Why? Because, there's too much speculation, but there's also no asset, behind that instrument. And so, as you mentioned, if you were to clean out all of the bad stuff, would we be better off economically as a world? Probably, right? Would we not grow as fast? Yeah, maybe, but there's something to be said about greed, right? And so, in a more participatory finance, realm, greed is out of the equation, right? You're going to grow your money, you're going to grow your assets, and you can invest more and more. That's not a problem, but you're not going to be highly levered, right? You're not going to be highly volatile, in terms of the asset classes that you're involved in, and
Mhm.
everything's going to be transparent and clear.
So it sounds like Manzil's more than just a like platform where you could get a house or a platform where you could invest. It sounds like you're really like trying to build something in the community that will get more people involved and kind of actually change the face of finance, because it's not just going to be these like crumbly old white men with comb overs anymore. It's going to be whole loads of new people coming in and investing in new things and changing the way we see investments, almost like more of a lifestyle than a platform in a way.
You know what, you're absolutely right, and it is more of a lifestyle, and what we're trying to build actually is an ecosystem, right? It's an alternative methodology of finance that is going to run parallel with the conventional counterpart. But what we're introducing now is, we're creating actually experts in legal, we're creating experts in audit and finance, we're creating experts in consulting and
Mm-hmm.
education around Islam, because this is a very new or virgin territory in Canada. If you go to the UK, you can get Islamic finance degrees. There are law firms with Islamic finance departments. There are accounting and audit firms and consulting firms with Islamic finance departments and specialists and experts. None of that is here in Canada. So anytime we have to engage with a third-party service provider, we're always educating them. And then it actually is a challenge that they take on to say, this is something new. We don't know if it can be done the way you want it to be done, but let's figure it out. And then when they actually do, it's a precedent, because this is something now that they can basically promote and say, we were the guys that did this for the very first time.
Yeah.
And right, and that brings more people towards the cause of, or the case of, building an Islamic finance industry here in Canada.
Wow, that's really cool. That's very exciting. Is that probably the thing you love most about Manzil?
Yeah, because for me, Menzel was always about impact, right? And once and initially it was impact of a certain community that was underserved, right? Because I was like, I can service up to 1.6 million, like that is going to be my impact. But then you start to work on it, and you start to see all of the, let's call it, additional ancillary people that you can touch, or industries. And like I mentioned, like we're impacting finance industry, we're impacting the legal industry, we're impacting even the non-Muslim community, because we're introducing them to an idea that they never thought of. And once they're on board with it, they love it. So the impact is actually beyond the actual community itself, even though that was kind of the vision. But it actually can be enveloped within our whole society.
Sounds exhausting and really rewarding at the same time.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I could talk to you all day about this stuff, but there are some quick questions I just want to ask you.
Of course,
There's some
absolutely.
very, very important. Why Manzil? Why the name?
So Menzel, I'm Palestinian by background, and my second language is Arabic. So Menzel, in, let's call it, traditional Arabic or Shakespearean Arabic, means house or foundation. And so
Um,
I saw that as let's make this company the foundation of your financial affairs or your financial lifestyle. And I was actually introduced to other definitions of the word in like Urdu, so like in Pakistani speaking individuals, in Turkish, and even in Farsi. And for them, it actually means destination. So I was like, oh,
Oh,
that's also pretty neat too, right? Like that
yeah.
Menzo can be that destination for you in terms of what you're trying to achieve in your financial plan or your financial lifestyle.
Aren't you lucky? Because it could have had a meaning that was really naughty or rude.
Yeah.
That was the actual like perfect one twice.
Yeah, we got really, really lucky on that one. So yeah, so I always love to share that story just because, you know, people, they love the meaning once they understand, you know, the word behind it. And so, you know, it just becomes this kind of, this all-encompassing word that you breathe and that you live by.
So my next question, super important, is if Manzil had a superpower, aside
Oh,
from changing the world and getting people houses and including the whole community in Canada and all this other stuff, what would it be?
if Menzel had a superpower. Wow. You know what? I think if Menzel had a superpower, we would create world peace, right? Like
Oh
just
gosh.
bringing all of these people and uniting them together on, you know, a front of just, you know, being ethical and moral and just being a good human being. I think that would be it.
You're the only bank, I think, who's ever said that. Like ever. How many like bankers or investors can you think of who'd actually say I'd go for world peace? Like none.
Yeah, it's all about profit.
Yeah, kind of, but you're more about like profit than profit.
I like that.
Ooh, I did
Profit.
that.
Yeah.
And my last question, this is one that we always ask to people that we're profiling. Ready? Snoop Dogg is the shareholder for Klarna. will.i.am is an advisor for Assetbacked. Which musical maestro would you have for Manzil?
Oh my God.
Oh my
Wow.
god.
You know what? I think it's got to be Justin Timberlake.
Okay, explain.
Um, and I'm only sharing an experience because, you know, I went to one of his concerts and we literally were in the nosebleed seats, like standing, like it was the last tickets available. And so we got upgraded to like floor seats.
Oh.
Yeah, and his show was like was just unbelievable. It was amazing. And you know, I think that he's a very genuine person.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's all about, like, there are aspects of him being on the social front and, you know, looking at social impact. So I think I would want somebody like that to be, you know, part of the Menzel team and to promote kind of our, let's call it, banking or humanitarian banking effort.
Nice. So, Justin Timberlake, if you're watching, this could be your moment. You never know.
Hashtag at, like, let's get him.
I thought you were going to pick someone Canadian, though. I thought when you said Justin, I was like, he's going to say Bieber because isn't he Canadian?
He is Canadian, yeah. And I was actually gonna say JT, not knowing if you knew what, because a lot of people are like, oh, Justin Trudeau, like our prime minister.
Oh yeah, he's really lush. He's a really good one.
Yeah, yeah, everyone loves him. But yeah, Justin Timberlake. Sorry for all the Canadian, you know, artists out there.
Well, Mohamad, thank you so much for coming on the virtual arena. It's been a real pleasure. And we all wish you the very best of luck for Manzil and also for lobbying the government and changing the world and all the other things that you're setting out to do.
Thank you so much, Hannah. Really, really appreciate this, and thank you so much for having me, and, you know, for your support and advocacy of our initiative.
It's been a pleasure. So thank you so much, and to everybody watching at home, thank you very much for watching us, and we'll see you next time.